carried out by the Ukrainian Ghosts Special Unit are claimed to have caused damage worth tens of millions of dollars. Damage to the tugboat significantly limits the combat capabilities of the elite Russian unit. The vessel met an unfortunate end. Ukraine's military intelligence has released footage showing drone strikes on 2 Russian Mi-8 helicopters and
2 Russian Mi-8 helicopters went up in flames inside a supposedly secure Crimean base. The footage you're about to see was captured not by jets or missiles, but by a low-cost FPV drone flying just feet above the ground. How could something this small breach one of the most hardened regions in Crimea with such devastating results? And how did the same tactic push deeper into Sevastopol harbor against a naval tug? Stick with this because the path these drones took exposes a playbook that traditional defenses were never built to stop. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Air bases in Crimea were designed to repel missiles and jets. So how did a $500 FPV drone burn 2 Russian Mi-8s in minutes? That's the puzzle. And the answer lies in how modern defenses were built for one type of war, while an entirely different one sneaked in at ground level.
The Mi-8 is a Soviet-era multi-role transport helicopter used for troop movements, cargo delivery, roughly 13 kilometers from Simferopol. The helicopters destroyed are valued at an estimated $20, 30 million. A military tugboat, believed to be the Buk 2190, was also struck in Sevastopol Bay.
When Russian forces fortified their Crimean air bases, they did it with layered systems patterned after Cold War playbooks. Long-range radar arrays circle the installations, antennas locked on high-altitude skies to track incoming bombers or cruise missiles. Shorter-range defenses sit closer to the perimeter, guarding against low-flying jets. Around the airstrip itself, watchtowers, patrols, and heavy fencing are meant to stop saboteurs or infiltration from the ground. To anyone walking past, it looks like a fortress welded together out of concrete, steel, and overlapping electronic eyes. And in a way, it is, at least against the kinds of attacks it was designed to face. But here is where the gap shows. These radar nets are tuned for large, fast, high-heat objects diving at hundreds of meters per second. They hunt for the distinct trail of a warhead, not the whisper of a racing drone smaller than a seagull. A handheld FPV craft skimming through trees doesn't ping the radar the way a missile does. Infrared tracking also breaks down because the heat signature is nearly nothing compared to a jet engine. The result is a mismatch. Billion-dollar systems, perfectly capable of intercepting high-speed ordnance, look blind when the threat creeps in at 10 feet with an electric buzz instead of a roar.
In 2014, has become a frequent target of Ukrainian strikes since the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022, reported destroying the radar of a Russian S-300 air defense system at the Saki airfield in western Crimea on September 5th. These attacks aim to degrade Russian military infrastructure, including air bases, fuel depots, and naval facilities.
Footage from the Sevastopol base reveals the moment this mismatch exploded into reality. The drone came in at dusk, flying barely above the brush line. Guards at outposts scanned the horizon, but their eyes were drawn upward toward potential incoming aircraft. By the time they spotted the tiny flash weaving in from the tree cover, that drone had already crossed half the perimeter. Within seconds, its camera lens locked on an Mi-8 parked on the edge of the airstrip. The machine cut low across the tarmac, slipped under a spotlight beam swinging overhead, and darted straight at the belly of the helicopter. The detonation wasn't massive by military standards, but it didn't have to be. Aviation fuel pooled under the fuselage caught fire instantly, and within moments, flames climbed into the cabin. Guards sprinted toward the blaze, but too late. The aircraft burned where it sat. This maneuver works because of a tactic known as nap of the earth flight. Pilots of attack helicopters have practiced it for decades, hugging the terrain so closely that their rotor blades sometimes skim treetops in order to avoid radar. These consumer drones, guided through headsets by operators miles away, borrow the same principle but shrink it down to backpack scale. By tracing the contours of the ground, water, or vegetation, they hide in clutter radar was never designed to interpret. And unlike military helicopters, they do this without roaring engines or blades creating a huge acoustic signature. They ride the gaps radar engineers considered irrelevant. Consider the economics too. Every cruise missile built with stealth coatings and heat-shielded exhausts costs millions of dollars. Firing one is a gamble in resources. An FPV drone, on the other hand, can be rebuilt for under $1,000 with parts available commercially. Operators don't need airfields or support staff, just trained eyes and a feed signal. The drones radiate barely any heat, use compact batteries, and transmit only narrow signals to their controllers. Each one is expendable, yet every strike costs the defender far more than the attacker spends. When the second helicopter went up, the difference between old defenses and new attack methods became even more striking. This drone scaled across the waterline of a nearby inlet, a surface where most radar beams skip or scatter. Searchlights swept across the harbor, chasing shadows, but the device hugged the reflection of the waves, its camera eyes leading it straight toward another Me-8 positioned near the pier. By the time spotters realized the threat wasn't birds or wave clutter, the drone had already surged across the perimeter wall. The blast came under the rotor hub, again igniting lines drenched with fuel. Within seconds, smoke curled into the night and crews scrambled without any chance to save their machines. These runs show how low-cost, low-tech approaches can cancel out the most advanced security grid in the region. Systems meant to repel squadrons of NATO aircraft found themselves irrelevant against hobby-sized craft flying just feet above the ground. The loophole is now out in the open. Massive investments in fixed defenses can be undone by simple, precise strikes at virtually no cost to the attacker. And while losing helicopters on the tarmac is one thing, the same approach has already been used at sea. Because just beyond the airfields of Crimea, the drones turn their lenses towards Sevastopol harbor, steering straight into the lifeline of Russian naval logistics. These strikes prove something fundamental. What once needed fleets of jets or precision missiles now comes from a headset and a consumer drone. Operators turning cheap electronics into guided weapons show how the cost of attack has collapsed while the cost of defense keeps mounting. If one FPV craft can torch helicopters inside fortified air bases, then every installation built for Cold War threats looks outdated overnight. The battlefield is shifting, and commanders know it. Stick with this channel for deeper breakdowns of the tactics reshaping war and the vulnerabilities no defense planner wants you to see next.